right, loves, you have joined me for the Be Well Beautiful People podcast. My name is Demarra West, and I have the privilege of being your host for the Alchemizing Trauma for Community Impact series, where we are featuring incredible Detroit leaders who have taken their personal trauma or the community trauma that they've been faced with, and they have transformed it to do impactful work in this community and beyond. I am so excited to join you as your host. I am author of Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal, Find Liberation and Joy. And we're going to be talking about that and all things in just a little bit. Today's episode and the entire series is being sponsored by the Love Building, H&B Services, and the Lit Bar. My hope is that these conversations that we're going to have today inspire you to step fully into the power that you have to discover or further ignite your healing journey, which ultimately helps to heal the world. I am here with today, Dr. Yusef Bunchy Shakur. So if you didn't know this, he is an author, an educator, a neighborhood organizer, and he is rooted in the language of Detroit. I love that. As a Black organic intellectual and unorthodox leader, Yusef, Dr. Shakur, is dedicated to social justice, working to enhance the lives of Black and oppressed communities. And his documentary, Redemption Road, which I had the privilege of looking at, is the story of Dr. YBS. It has received critical acclaim, and it has won the Juror Winner Award at the social impact category of the Orlando Urban Film Festivals. That's right. And the Breakthrough Film Award at the Detroit Black Film Festival. So we're going to be talking about that because y'all definitely need to see it. It was so good. And on top of that, we're going to be exploring how Dr. Shakur's complex childhood trauma and his time leading up to and during incarceration shaped his commitment to healing Detroit and beyond. But before I do that, let's ground into a quote by James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. I saw your lips moving when I did that quote.
Yes, that's one of my favorites.
That's one of your go-tos.
Yes.
Okay, you looking dapper today, Dr. Shakur.
Thank you. I'm trying to match you.
Hey, we did it. We did it. I've been practicing my what up, though.
What up, though? What up, though?
Okay, so wait a minute. Why did Bryce tell me you about 60% there? Would you say that too?
Say it one more time.
What up, though?
I give you 65.
65. Okay, so I've improved a little bit. I'll take it. Yeah. So how you doing today, King?
I'm good. Just when you say, you just got to be what up, though?
Oh, okay. So I got to really put some umph in it.
Yes, what up, though?
What up, though?
Exactly.
Okay, so now I'm at like 80%?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm good.
Okay. Awesome. So let's just start with the first exploration. I had the privilege of watching your documentary, which was really heartfelt. It was a gift truly for me to see it, to witness where you came from, what you had become, what you are now is a testament to the fact that it doesn't matter where we start in life, but all that matters is where we choose to finish.
Correct.
So talk to us about the role that being accountable for your own choices has played in your own redemption.
Well, that question is interesting, accountability of choices. And it's interesting to me because it depends on what lens that we're using to answer that question. For me, accountability, I think, because there's this perception poor people, oppressed people are afraid of accountability. In reality, we're more accountable than those who are not in our circumstance, because the fact that we have to get up every day to figure out something, right? Choices is influenced by circumstances and is also influenced by the lack of. All our choices are not equal. When your stomach is touching your back, when you feel emotionally detached from something, it's hard to make proper choices when you're not thinking clearly, or nor do you have the proper information, and we don't take those in consideration. So once I began to gain proper information, once I began to mature emotionally, it put me in a position to make better choices. And you can use the word loosely of better choices. And responsibility is something that was installed in me. But to be responsible for what? I mean, I was responsible as a gang member. I was responsible for just kicking ass.
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
you bring up a really good point, right? And that a lot of times we can only be accountable to what we know to be accountable to. And so even though accountability, and it was a word that I actually thought about not using in the question, right? Because I know that it's a very loaded word.
Yes, it is.
And I the reason why I'm glad that I asked you is because it allowed us to really lean into the exploration around what does it actually mean to be accountable. And that, we could argue that everybody's accountable in some shape or form based on what it is that they've been given, what it is that they've been exposed to, essentially.
Correct.
Yeah. So when you think about that word then versus now, what does that word mean to you now?
The word of responsibility?
Accountability.
Accountability, responsibility. Again, being accountable as a Black human being, a Black person, a Black man, a Black son, a Black father. And I'm emphasizing Black because we live in a world where it's full of anti-Blackness. And until I was able to fully comprehend Black, and sometimes we get lost in the translation as the color of my pants. I don't mean the color of my pants. I mean a social, cultural, political dynamic. Once I understood that, the weight that came with that brought a level of responsibility, i.e., I'm not trying to be Malcolm X. However, my life is similar to Malcolm X. And by examining Malcolm X's life, I was able to find solutions to my life. And so with the James Baldwin quote, confronting myself and to be able to make the necessary changes. And the changes was transforming from a former gang member to who I am, but also understanding like me becoming a gang member wasn't an indictment on myself, it was an indictment on the society that exploited a very vulnerable communities, a very vulnerable families that lead folks to figure out the best way they can how to make it in a racist and exploitive society.
Well, and it goes back to the options part that you said, right? If people are given a plate and this is the plate, what do you choose from the menu? This is all that there is to choose from the menu.
Correct.
And if you want to survive, right, we do all kinds of things to survive in life.
Yeah, and the thing that we have to be careful in a society such as this, right? So I'll just flip it to make this point. God, white men, Black men and other men, and then women, and then Black women, right? So in that order, when you look at women, in particular Black women, the stigmas that come with that, the barriers that keeps you all trapped. And I'm speaking specific to Black women. And I want to use that analogy and that example because now when you broaden them as Black people, it's the same dynamic. But Black women is deeper within that social circumstance. But as survivors, we're condemned, but then when we make it, we celebrate it. But but it's only till we celebrate. And how many of us are celebrated at our ability to succeed?
Yes.
And then they say, well, Yusef made it, you can make it. But that's not necessarily the case because we all are not equal in terms of our determination, our passion. So it's just got to be careful. Not meaning you, but just in society of how and even myself, like. We're so trapped in saying you're such a you have such a wonderful success story. What the fuck is a success story? That sounds like something very prostitutable.
Yeah.
I don't even know that's such a word, but I'm just saying.
Listen, we can make up whatever word we want to make up.
And so it's just being like, have we survived? Absolutely. But do we look at what we survived from to what we become?
And what's the cost of just survival, right? And I think what you're inviting us to think about is intersectionalism, and that, particularly when we talk about in the context of Blackness, everybody's experience is not created equal, right? Like all communities of poverty aren't operating the same.
Correct.
You have family systems, you have all kinds of things that influence our ability, right, to see ourselves and to see the world as clearly as we need to. And the reality is that there are a lot of things that hinder us from seeing, but also what you're offering us is to consider that even though you made it, this is not just about following your blueprint to make it, because we have individual lives and what somebody else might need to make it, whatever that is. And for those of you who are on audio, I literally used, a quotation mark, because it's really in the eye of the beholder, right? What success looks like.
Absolutely.
And do you, so it makes me now ask the question, it doesn't sound like success is something that you're in pursuit of, right? So what are you in pursuit of?
That's a great question. I'm in pursuit of transformation.
Yeah.
I'm in pursuit of embracing my vulnerability. I'm in pursuit of being the best human being I can be as a Black person. And by achieving those things, it puts me closer to Black liberation.
Yeah.
I live in a society that is forever trying to attack me, attack us in some form or some fashion, and trying to say that on one hand, I want you to be your authentic self, but when you be your authentic self, can you tone it down? Can you wear that? Can you do that? And so it's, and even more importantly, it's from our own kind.
Yes.
Versus from white folks or other folks and things. So
because of our own internalized racial oppression, right?
So again, and like for me, it's that's where I'm trying to be at. Ultimately, if you strip me of all my accolades, this is who you see. I don't want you to love me because of my accolades.
Yes.
I don't want to love. I want you to love me because I'm not the only guy that been to prison. I'm not the only guy that been in the streets and things I did. It's millions of us.
Yes.
And the goal in my mind is where that should not continue to be a reality of those who come after us.
Yeah, that's real. And I want to key in on something that you said, which, we talk a lot about transformation and some of the other words, they're pretty commonplace, but to hear you say as a Black man that you are embracing your vulnerability as a man and as a Black man, that is really I think that's revolutionary.
Absolutely.
And so talk to us about why embracing vulnerability is so critical for you and why it's so critical for all of us, and particularly Black men, to also consider embracing their vulnerability.
We've been taught not to. Depends on how you grew up, and I'll just say for a sector of us who grew up in the hood, ghetto, so to speak, and those who are familiar with that language, what it entails, and you can't afford to be looked as weak in those environments. So you gotta wear the mask at a high level. Some folks would say toxic masculinity, which is a term I don't use at all. That's another conversation, but I'm using it for the sake of this conversation. And many of us grow up the absence of feeling love by our fathers, the absence of feeling love by just a man in general, and so we don't see the vulnerability. Or in one hand, we do see it. We just see it in a very deformed way, and which makes our lives become deformed on the same spectrum because we don't learn how to communicate ourselves.
Yes.
And so we become these very intense walking time bombs, exploding verbally, physically, and etc. And so the ability to embrace your vulnerability is the ability to embrace who you are, and me and I sit with that. Like the best fights I won was the ones I didn't win.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is the ones I sat back and I took my lickings and looked at myself and realized like I shouldn't even been fighting in the first place. It wasn't nothing worth to fight for, but I was just so caught up and so mad. I was full of rage.
Yeah.
And that's what for me vulnerability. It's going to a place that scares the shit out you, and the ability to sit with that. And it'll produce the type of wealth that you can't spend.
Yeah.
But it make you better and make you more wealthy as a human being.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine that in many ways, it's helped you also to be a better father, to be a better leader, to be a better community member. Like when you're leading with a sense of exposure, right? And I want to touch on, as you know, I'm a therapist. And so, I think a lot about pathology. And the reason why you talk about that rage and all of these explosive energies that are released, why? Because it's emotion stacked upon emotion, stacked upon emotion, stacked upon emotions.
Right.
And whatever we don't allow to come out, it's coming out.
Right.
It's coming out.
It's gonna come out regardless.
And either it's going to be harmful to yourself, to society, or even though we understand where it's coming from, right? But I love this invitation for us to look at vulnerability as one of our superpowers, essentially. Even though, as you said, the world tries to make us be the opposite of that oftentimes, right? We do. We say it's like we're speaking out of both sides of our mouth. Be vulnerable, be exposed. But actually what we want you to do is do those things as long as you're like us.
Right. And the thing of it is, when you be vulnerable, is the road to how to be strong.
Yes.
But when we take the route of trying to be strong without being vulnerable, we lose.
This is so good. But so oftentimes men and boys receive the message that strength first. Strength by any means necessary, right?
Correct.
And if you show any sign of weakness whatsoever, there is something problematic about you. There's something defunct in you.
Correct.
Yes.
Exactly.
And
You're not a man.
You're not a man, right? Which is the opposite of our natural design, because we're supposed to feel all the things, right? It may not manifest the same, but I think that as we do the work of liberation, like do the internal work, that a lot of times both men, women, non-binary folks, our emotions actually show up very similar.
Correct.
Right? We may not express them the same, but we do experience the same kinds of things. And so thank you for naming that. So in hearing your story, there were so many things that were intertwined with my own complex childhood trauma. And there was a moment in your documentary where you described this miraculous moment. I'm calling it miraculous because it felt very miraculous to me, where you reunified with your father. You found a pathway to forgiveness based on the fact that he abandoned you. And that was a really beautiful moment. And there's so much more to it. And this is why y'all need to see the documentary. But what I'm curious about is that I never heard you talk about your mom in that same context. Your mom was a part of the documentary. She shared her truths quite a bit. You shared your truths in connection with your upbringing. And so what I'm curious about is, what was the journey to forgive her?
So let me add context. That documentary that you're referencing, it was the writing of it and the development of it was something done 10, 15 years ago. My interview was new. Everything else, some of the writing was different. But again, in the documentary, I said my mother's my hero. My father's my mentor. And there's other parts where, I celebrate my mother, but the essence of the birth of that documentary was looked at through a screwed lens, through a very highly patriarchal lens. So when I talk about myself, like, man, I met my father in prison, and I say, in meeting my father in prison, my mother's prayers was answered. And acknowledging that, but no, I forget. So you said my father abandoned. My father just didn't abandon me, abandoned my mother first and foremost, and then subsequently me. Did I forget my mother? I mean, I forgave my father, and it was he gave me reasons. He fucked up to put him in position to where I ain't need to. Either I was or not going to forgive him. My mother, in retrospect, my mother's my mother. My mother's my heart. Who I am and what all I would be, good, bad, indifferent. She's forgiven in every capacity because of so my dissertation. And so it was a great question that leads into. It's completely about my mother.
Yeah.
It's completely dedicated to my mother, but that dedication is also part of that continued growth, that continued exploration of myself. Again, so my dissertation, I add on the word vulnerability, a black vulnerability, and I add on transformation, black transformation. So to get the black transformation is to go through black vulnerability, and what I mean by black vulnerability is to wrestle with those black social dynamics. So give example, like my mother when I was a child, despite whatever she was going through, or whatever she was going through, she would find herself drinking or take a drink, right? And then she would discipline me, and I hated her. The thought of drinking, hated, but the question or the breakthrough later in my life, as I write my dissertation, I never asked, why does she drink, or what do she need to find comfort in alcohol, and that's her decision.
Yeah.
And how she operates, and doesn't, whether it's right or wrong, that's a debate for another time. But because of how the nature of patriarchy is, like, we love our women, we love our mothers, our sisters, but we hold them at an unreal expectation.
And sometimes we say we love them, but our actions don't align
Absolutely
with
correct.
that love, right? It reminds me of a song by Tupac, and I can't remember what it is right now, and I'm going blank, but I've heard it countless times, right? Like, I think it begs the question around, I love that you're saying this, right? And we're going down a pathway that I'm sure that, we may not have even known we were going to go down today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's the pathway that's an important one, because it begs the question around, are we asking the right questions? And are we holding ourselves accountable for the ways in which that we may be doing harm to the matriarchs and those who are not matriarchs within our communities, right? How are we harming our Black women and our Black girls when we don't do the work to interrupt the patriarchy?
Correct. So you said, are we asking the right question? There's a question out there: can women raise boys to be men? That is a question that you can find in most households, most academic places, most churches, just universal everywhere. Is that the right question? For me, the right question is, why is a woman left to raise a boy to be a man?
To begin with.
Exactly.
Yes.
But even then, there's those who will trump that and say, well, she kicked me out, or she won't let me see my son, or et cetera. And I think those are a smaller view of individuals than the larger dynamic. And it's not an either or, and it's not an indictment on my father or men per se. This, but it's an exploration. But this exploration goes through what? Through vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. And it's an invitation to examine.
Absolutely. But are we willing to examine ourselves in that way?
Yeah.
Are we willing to go into that level of vulnerability and to say, I wasn't prepared, to be a father? I wasn't prepared to be with you. Besides, I just saw you. You was nice. You was looking nice and blue today, and you arose something in me. And it wasn't. In Black communities, unfortunately, we had temporary relationships that lead to lifelong commitment or dynamics.
Well, and so this is really powerful, Dr. Shakur, and what occurred to me and how you talked about your mom, and I heard the love for her, the reverence for her during the entire documentary. And when I spent some time at Mama Cool Community House, and we talked about her, right? Like, your mother was clearly at the center of your world, and so what I'm gleaning based on the question that I asked, what was your journey to forgive her? It sounds like there was no journey to forgive her. You never really felt. Yes, you had moments as a child where you had ill feelings towards her in these moments of her lashing out at you. But I think that was superseded by all the ways that she showed up to care for you.
But the thing of it is, I had to do deeper examination. Some of it was taking place before I lost my mother, and then upon losing my mother, it just the walls just broke down. To be able to see, like, was my mother perfect? Fuck no, she wasn't perfect at all. But she was just like many other Black women, Black mothers. She dealt with the cards that was given to her, raising 3 kids by herself and not making an excuse, figuring going without. Like, what is there to forgive?
Yeah. And that's what I heard. And there's deep empathy rooted in that, right? And in order for you to get to that space of empathy. And it's unfortunate. That's one of the gifts of death, right? Like, I know that we don't want to lose people in physical form, but one of the gifts of losing them is that it really allows us to face ourselves and to come to terms with some things. And it sounds like things shifted for you. You were already pondering some very deep things, but when she left this earth physically, it really made you see things and to see her more clearly.
True. And again, and seeing her clearly was also challenging me to be willing to want to see the world through as much as I possibly can through the lens of her as a woman. To see myself through that dynamic. Again, so I want to be clear to your audience. Like, my mother wasn't perfect, but like when I say where there's the forgive, when she didn't have a job, there was food in the fucking refrigerator. Somehow.
Yes.
I may not got the Michael Jordan, but I had shoes on my feet on my feet. There was a roof over our head. Hook or crook, she made it happen.
Yes.
Along with the times that she was hard, but again, she's hard because the society's hard on her,
and because life is stacked on her, and right? So, when you don't have your basic needs met, and I really appreciate what you said, that your father didn't just leave you; he left her.
Yeah.
And so not only did she had to deal with the work of raising you and your sister, she had to also deal with the grief of losing this man that she loved.
True. But here's a flip thing to that is, because of the patriarchal society that we live in, and like many others, my oppression started when my father left. But in reality, my oppression started with a 15-year-old girl who decided to have her first child out of wedlock. And remember, again, we don't use the word out of wedlock no more, but in the time of the 70s, that was a hell of a stigma. You're talking about a double negative, a child of wedlock, a teenage pregnancy. There's a plethora of different social dynamics that's being attached to her body. That's also being attached to my body.
Come on now.
That's being formed and shaped. And when I come out her womb, those things are literally attached to me that I am unaware of. Even as I grow up, I'm still unaware of, because there's the privilege of being a boy who the society says that you need your father. So when my mother comes home and she's doing the best she can, and I'm complaining like, well, you ain't do me this, and I can't make it, or whatever she says, and I whisper, I wish I had my daddy. How dare I say some shit like that? When, again, I love my daddy to the fullest.
But that was deeply painful for her.
But my point of it is, he never bought me a pair of shoes. He never cooked food for me. Not saying he wouldn't have done that, but the reality is he wasn't there. He abandoned us, and he abandoned us because he was criminalized. So I see both sides, but I'm saying, but because of how patriarchy worked, it never allowed me to value my mother. Because we don't value women besides to serve us.
We gonna have to come back to have a whole nother conversation about that, right? And I feel like you are ruffling some shit. That's what we supposed to do. And so for the Black men that are listening out there, or for men that have been, also abandoned by their fathers, who are struggling with forgiving them or struggling with forgiving their mothers, what do you want to say to them?
And forgiving my father,
because you saw his humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had to forgive myself, but also there's this close relationship. Because here's the thing that we as Black men, and there's a segment of us since the 70s to now have all been raised by single mothers. There's almost 3-4 generations of this, right? And there's such a incredible bond and dynamics there that on one hand it's the love is like a volcano, and then the dynamics of the misunderstanding is like a tornado, right? Like, you don't understand me, you're stopping me. Like it's this night and day thing that's going on. And it's real, but you don't know how to wrestle with that. You don't know how to make sense of that because we don't know how to make sense of patriarchy because it doesn't coexist within the dynamic of loving our mothers the way that we authentically say we do. Because again, like when I was banging, I'm banging, but then also I'm protecting my mothers and sisters, but who's protecting them from me?
Ooh, you asking some hard questions today.
And these are things that I had to resolve within myself. Because again, like you said, I said I love them, but if I love them, why am I putting their lives in danger?
Come on.
You know, why am I going on and banging with a guy and the guy coming shooting at my mama house, throwing firebombs at my mama house? So I didn't know how to love my mother because I didn't know how to love myself.
Yeah.
So it was misdirected, but that misdirection is a product of what I call we were socially molested. Was socially and our fathers was socially molested, meaning that we was taken advantage of by certain dynamics that stripped us of our humanity. And some of us are deeper than others, and it produces us because we live in a predator society that we become predators.
Yes.
And as a result, we're praying because as a predator, you're looking for the weak. And who's considered the most weak in this society?
Black people.
Who's also considered weaker than them?
Black women.
Exactly.
And then we're not even going to talk about the children and the way that we harm these babies, right? And which you were one of those babies, right? And so before we get into this next aspiration, I would love to hear you talk a little bit about, like, what is the solution? How do we strip away the way that we've been socialized within this male patriarchal system so that we are not contradictors, so that we do not become the oppressors in the midst of our oppression?
So let me clarify something as well. Like my indictment on patriarchy is not an indictment on patriarchy itself. Like my mother raised me to be a man's man, without a doubt, and that's what I'm going to be. But understanding as being a man's man that it needs to be deconstructed in terms of where it shouldn't be God, men, and everybody else.
Yeah.
Like everybody's was created to serve me, to be up under me. So that's the part of patriarchy that needs to be deconstructed and broke down. And that's part of the solution. And also the ability to, for Black folks, for me, is like we're so disconnected from ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's a forever going struggle to learn that because our history has been given to us in bits and pieces, and you got to kind of go under a rock, over a rock to find that information. So my journey to being Dr. Yusef Bunchy Shakur started from gaining knowledge of self. Gaining knowledge of self eradicated the thought process of seeing this world through the lens of a predator to see the world through the lens of a protector. Now, let me be completely honest and transparent. That's an ongoing struggle. That's an ongoing transformational dynamic. Like sometimes we think because I say we read a few books or you do this, you'll change human being. No, that's not how that works. That's like, some of it, no knock on any religion or religious people. Like it's not just you just wake up and you give your life to Christ or you give your life to Allah. You have to work for that.
Yes.
You have to put in work to be able to maintain that. And so for me, embracing the ideology of being a revolutionary, which pushes me to be the best human being as a Black person.
Which means that you're constantly pouring into self. You're constantly reading. You're constantly going to training. You're constantly engaged in meaningful conversations. You're constantly asking yourself these really big questions and assessing yourself on, the things like, am I living aligned with the values that I say that I espouse?
Exactly.
Because so oftentimes we're walking around and we're contradictions.
Correct.
There's a space between who we are and who we say we are.
And who we fear.
Come on now.
And what the society can create of us. And then sometimes we because we all have worn the mask, right?
Yes.
And we forgot how to take the mask off. And that's who we become.
Yes.
Just the mask wearer.
Yeah, and a caricature of who we really are. So it's brought me great joy to hear about the intentional work that you've done on yourself in general, but particularly so that you can be a good father to your son.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us about what that has entailed and why it's so important to acknowledge and face trauma so that we can break the cycle or at least lessen its hold on us.
Well, to brace or to face trauma is also to face the oppression that created the trauma. And again, going back to the quote, James Boyle, you can't change something that you're not willing to confront. And black folks in this country, like, man, certain movies come out like, man, I ain't trying to watch that type of stuff, man. That shit is, no, I ain't, blah, blah, blah. But you can't heal yourself until you confront what caused the problem.
And so oftentimes we don't want to look at it.
No, and I get it. Right? That's vulnerable. It doesn't take strength. It takes vulnerability.
Yes.
Those are two different things.
Because we know how to be strong.
Absolutely, you do. But we don't know how to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Not in an authentic way.
Right.
Because in reality, as human beings, you're always vulnerable.
Come on now.
But, and that's just natural. And I think the more vulnerable we are with ourselves, the better we become to be able to navigate these things. And also, I think it creates better opportunities. Because I think we live in a society, we act like we all got to get along. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
But the more open and honest that you are with who you are, the ability to get along with other people will just be natural.
Yeah.
Because again, it goes back to wearing the mask. Like, especially with black folks, like we find ourselves at different venues, and if I tell you, like, shit, I got here, I really ain't having too much gas in my car, and you like, shit, I ain't had that much gas in my car either. But who gonna say that first? We both putting our fronts up.
Yeah. And this is why, right, both formal storytelling and just simply speaking our truths is so important, because as we both know, it's what creates connection.
Absolutely.
Right.
Exactly.
But you're right. Somebody's got to be the first to say, I don't got it together.
Exactly.
Right. And there's real beauty in that. And I think that's where the magic lies.
Magic and strength.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. So talk to us about how you feel that you have intentionally risen so that you could become the best parent that you could be to your baby.
So I got two babies.
Oh, why am I just talking about the son?
Well, so because in the documentary, there's a picture of my youngest, but we don't talk about, again, remember the time frame.
Right. Okay.
So I have a 32-year-old and I have a 20-year-old.
Okay.
And things. Two spectrums. One was born out of my predator lifestyle. The other was born out of my transformation. So you see two different individuals in terms of their growth as a reflection of the social dynamics that influenced me that will ultimately impact them. To be the best parent is to be the best person that I can be. I mean, ultimately, life, that's a joy. That's a gift in itself. Not everybody get the opportunity to do that. And so I take that very seriously. And to invest in them is if I'm not investing in myself, I can't invest in them. And to be the best model that they can be. And so I was fortunate enough, meeting my father, and that relationship helped set a foundation. But ultimately, to be the best parent is the most consistent parent that I've had, which is my mother. Her sacrifices ring loudly in terms of parenthood, her assertiveness, her love, and all those things. But also you learn, every generation is different. Like my youngest son, I've never whipped him. So he deserved whippings. I just didn't. Chose not to. Chose to love different and raise him different. But gets on my last nerves on some days. But again, I wrestle with different dynamics of the language that we try to use that's tied to our oppression that we bring into how we relate. And I think some of it's some truth, but I think some of it's just being lazy of just saying certain things. But because every generation is different.
Yeah.
Like my generation, I mean, some of the ass whippings I got, I absolutely deserved them. Did they make me? We can debate that, right?
And we could debate whether or not there was another pathway that could have been
correct.
taken that could have also gotten you in line, which is why I think in part you decided not to use physical force with your youngest baby.
Correct. I mean, and let's be clear, like for me and my mother, like it was violence or physical abuse wasn't the norm, but it was at the point like, motherfucker, I done told you 100 times.
Listen, I done been there. I'm not gonna tell y'all. Wait, there was one time an iron was involved. Okay, the iron was not turned on, y'all. Okay, but one time there was an iron that was involved. So parents reach a certain point, and a lot of times they have their own challenges that they're faced with, and they also have the burden, which is sacred, and it's a gift.
And I think that like the aha in this conversation, I haven't had the word to explain it. Now I think I do. The more we learn how to deal with the internalized oppression, the racism that we face, the better parents we can be. And so I've learned from my mother's generation to deal with those things betterly, where I didn't have to exhibit and respond. So what I'm saying is, so for my generation, I think my mother, like, literally was trying to whoop me to be good, but also whooping me to be knowing, like, dog, you're in a society that sees you as a danger. And she didn't necessarily know how to say that or consciously look at that, but I think subconsciously, like, I'm trying to beat the devil out you, right? But I'm trying to beat where you don't go out there.
I'm trying to beat you to protect you.
Exactly.
And what you're naming, Dr. Shakur, is written explicitly about in post-traumatic slave syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy-Leary. That a lot of this is in our subconscious, that yes, no, we are not the generation that were slaves, but yet a lot of our ideology, our behaviors unconsciously, and how we're raising our children is rooted in a lot of those early experiences connected to chattel slavery.
But also, what we gotta keep in mind, even though the physical thing has changed, psychologically, the society of a white society and still oppressing black people, that has not changed.
And keeping and working tenaciously to keep folks in their place.
Correct.
Or to write a narrative that you're this way when you're actually not, right? And this has happened to Detroit often, right? Correct. Detroit has been painted as, a place that is violent, and yet there are so many aspects of Detroit that make this place so beautiful.
But even the parts that's violent, right? We don't going back to, excuse me, are we asking the right question?
Yeah.
Listen, folks, I know, we're still trying to paint this picture, when I say we, this society and the powers that be, as if black folks are inherently violent. That's bullshit.
Yes. Come on now. Because our design, and I was just talking about this during the interview I did before ours, our natural design is to be love and light.
Absolutely.
Right? When we come into this world, it's the adult around us, the world around us that squanders that.
But when you remove that love and light, that light turns into darkness.
Yes.
That love turns into anger. Mm-hmm. And as you said earlier, it got to come out.
That's right. Right.
Frantz Fanon, a black psychiatrist, wrote a couple books. One of his most popular was called Wretched Earth, and he talks about how oppressed people takes on the characteristics of the oppressor.
Yes.
And as they take on those characteristics, the first people that they act that on is those who are in their immediate proximity. Yeah. So statistics says, again, when you look at crime happens with those in your immediate proximity. So, again, let's zero in. Grosse Pointe is not better than Detroit. In terms, they haven't had a murder in 20 years. The difference is they have resources. You show me a community with resources, I'll show you a safe and secure community.
Come on.
You show me a community that doesn't have resources, I'll show you a violent community. I'll show you a community that's surviving. I'll show you a community that's willing to go the extra mile because I got to feed my baby. And I'm taking on the characteristics of doing for self to the extreme.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So you're keenly aware of the power that education has had on your life based on the many doors it's opened for you, right? And I know that you don't lead with that, right? You are Yusef at Yusef's core. And the reality is that you've invested tenaciously in your education, both formally and informally.
Yes.
So talk to us about how your pursuit of knowledge has fueled your growth and why you believe that education is the key to empowering marginalized communities, particularly in cities like Detroit.
So when I went to prison, I was on my deathbed, psychologically, spiritually. And it was books that resurrected me. It was books that gave me mouth to mouth. It was books that performed surgery on my mind to allow me to perform surgery on my heart. And those books began to enlighten me to no longer see myself through this anti-Black lens, to perform in an anti-Black way towards myself, to no longer not see you or the next person as my enemy. Now, could we still have differences? Absolutely. And that's what knowledge did. And once I got a taste of it, I wanted it. Now, when I went to prison, I was functioning on a fourth grade reading level. By the time I left prison, I mean, mind you, I had never been to any college, whatever. I earned my GED, but I was functioning on a college level. And there's nothing no one else did in terms of a system there. It's just it was an unorthodox system. Reading banned books, like my father had given me the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I took that. And so I was known as a guy. Like in prison, you can have a Foot Locker, and most people who have a Foot Locker have either law books in there, or if you're a serious law guy, you can have two Foot Lockers, one with your personal items and another with all your law material. And my Foot Locker was nothing but books. You know, when my mother still practiced tradition, where every holiday she wanted to buy me clothes and things, just still wanted to stay in touch and connected with me in that way. And I appreciate that, but can you go to Shrine of Black Madonna and send me these books? I mean, that's who I became.
Yeah.
Coming home.
So as soon as you got a taste, you just could not stop eating.
No, I couldn't. No, I was feeding myself on it, and then it was just learning different meals with that, right? Staying on that analogy. And coming home, got into community college and just staying on that path. And then at some point, you got to apply what you learn. You got to apply the knowledge, and then I get to a point in my life as a well-respected activist, well-respected organizer, et cetera, different labels and shit. And you're frustrated, and I'm like, man, I need to go back to school. And the reason I want to go back to school because my love language is learning. My happy place is learning.
Yeah.
And so, and also, you get dull doing this work. It gets stagnant. And so going back to school created me an opportunity to learn, but also the environment with folks who, Arab person, white person, et cetera, like having healthy discourse, sharpening, your mental blade and things. And that's why, like me earning my PhD was personal. It wasn't professional.
Yeah.
It impacted me professionally, but it was all personal.
So this is really, really powerful because you didn't even know that you had an appetite for learning until you had this space. And then your first book, which was it the autobiography of Malcolm X? Was that the first one that was really, really transcendent for you?
Absolutely.
And I want to talk about, marinate a little bit on 4 additional books, those early reads that impacted you to think of yourself and to see yourself clearly for the brilliant, powerful Black man that you are. And what's so critical about this is that a lot of times the reason why I think that people don't connect to education is because they don't see themselves reflected in the education. There's no value in it. Right? They don't see value in how it's going to translate them from getting out of poverty to where, to making an income that's going to change the trajectory of their family's lives. They don't necessarily see the value in the stories because they can't connect oftentimes to the stories that we're being asked to read because it's not necessarily a representation of who we are. And so I love hearing you say that you realize that learning was just something that was a part of you, that if you're not doing it, you don't feel like you're fueling yourself. And in the therapeutic world, we call what you've just described bibliotherapy, right? Using books as a vehicle to help to enlighten us, right? But then to also, I love that you're saying that you recognize that this was just a part of who you were. And that without books, you're not completely who you are.
Correct.
So tell us about those 5 books that you read early on that changed the way that you see yourself and why you recommend that everybody needs to read them.
Autobiography of Malcolm X. It's a classic. I think the honesty, the way he wrote, still stands the test of time. Claude Brown, the Man Child in the Promised Land. I believe that probably was one of the first autobiographies written about a black person, black man growing up in Harlem. It was, rites of passage. Wretched of the Earth by Franz Fanon. That was a very heavy book, but it helped to begin to now put the dots together on the psychological within the framework of a struggle. Seize the Time, book about the Black Panther Party, similar, all the other three books, because you learn when you read one book, it talks about some of them can talk about other books, but now you're learning about the transformation, but you're seeing the knowledge being applied, right? And I'm seeing 19, 20-year-old JoJo seeing what a 19-year-old Huey Newton is doing, it's not apples to apples, but it's apples to apples in different time frames. Like, okay, now this what I can be, based upon who I didn't. I mean, and this is what I learned about Bunchy Carter, who my middle name is taken after in honoring him. The autobiography of Untitled Shakur, also a member of the Black Panther Party. The ability to, again, when we think about life, when we think about struggles, we always think about men and fathers and sons, like we got it hard. In some cases we do, but we don't take into consideration the gender dynamics. And black women just got it hard, but just a different pathway. And so reading her book, it puts in context, in my opinion, what not all black women, but you could see the struggles of black women. Because here was one black woman that went through most shit, but most dudes couldn't survive. And so it can help you say, oh shit, no, women ain't weak, the way we're taught to think.
And let's be real, if we were to tell the story of many women in this country, many single black women, most of us would be blown away.
Correct, absolutely. What's another book? Miseducation of the Negro, Carter G. Wilson. It speaks for itself. As long as we was miseducated, we're subjected to being slaves or being enslaved.
Thank you for just giving us those nuggets. I know that wasn't one of the things that we talked about preparing for.
It's all good.
But that's a part of the organicness of this conversation, yes. Doc. So the work that you do to build community, I imagine at times takes a real toll on you. For example, in your documentary, and I know that you say that it was a little bit dated, right? You came home from prison and you were confronting young men wreaking havoc on your neighborhood. Most people could not fathom doing such a thing, and yet you did. And so talk to us about how you balance your emotional and physical demands with the seriousness of the work that you do to build community.
I think first it has to be acknowledged, like I'm not the first to come home and do it. I'm in line with so many others. The unfortunate reality, not a lot of us are successful, so that book is still being developed out and being written. And so there's this statistic that says that people who go to prison, you can't go back to your neighborhood because you're possibly going to get killed or get trapped back into it. Not here to debate that. I don't think I'm a success story in that way, and this leads to the heart of your question, where you have to figure out, well, one, what is the purpose of you being back in your neighborhood? What is the purpose of being in the society? Because the traps are everywhere, and I had my own, coming like I got shot after I got out of prison. I got stabbed after I got out of prison. So I'm saying, like, when I was a gangbanger, I was fortunate enough I never got shot. When I was in prison, I was fortunate enough I never got stabbed. It's after when those things occurred to me, and I wasn't back in the game by any means. It's just the circumstances, it's the traps, it's the dynamics, and so life is intense, and it's definitely intense. And when poverty, and trying to find a job, and when the walls feel like closing up on you, and again, going back to just learning who I was. So like, looking in the mirror and saying like, dog, that ain't you. that vengeful person to want to go fuck somebody up.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the person who stabbed me or cut me, because he was my mother's boyfriend, I wanted to fuck him up. And I plotted, and I caught his ass. And I'm standing right behind him. He's in the lottery line. He looked back like he saw the devil. And it was just me and him. And I could have did whatever. And I'm like, man, I'm good, and walked off.
Wow.
Because if I beat his ass and done whatever, that wouldn't have took the wound away.
So did you have that clarity in that moment?
Yeah, that moment, it snapped from me.
And then you just walked away.
Just walked away.
And I imagine that all of us, we have countless moments where we're given a chance to say, nah, I'm not going to do this.
But let me be clear, when I walk away, I'm in a vulnerable space. If I rough my vulnerability, it leads me to being more violent. Embracing my vulnerability was embracing my weakness.
Yeah.
To be strong.
Mm-hmm.
But weakness not in being a weak person.
Yeah.
But in terms of the ability to be flawed. The ability to not be able to maintain and manage my emotions. But also being honest, like, he wasn't trying to kill me. It was just unfortunate circumstances happen.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I'm a young lion. He's a lion. Because there was other circumstances. I come out of prison, and my mother, they got a relationship, and they're pissing on the wall, who marking our territory, and I see it, and I'm trying to duck it because I'm living with my mama. I can't tell her who she can sleep with and how to run her house, and and it's clashing. And it's deeper than just saying conflict resolution.
Sure.
It's like we throw that word out there, but it's more about relationship. It's about valuing, along with, because you leave room for disagreements.
Yeah.
But he felt the need to protect himself, and I felt the need to assert myself.
Yeah.
And led to the conclusion of a violent interaction. So now in the reflection at that moment, and it's like it's moving fast because I'm thinking fast through the situation. That leads me to like my bad, and we was cool ever since then.
But both of y'all, it sounds like it was like a kill or be killed, right? There was a sense that either you go or I go, and how it's such a gift that you decided to walk away, because if you hadn't of, who knows if you would be here today.
Correct.
Right?
Exactly.
So there was something in you where you knew that this has to be it. We got to dead it right here. And then things got better from that point for you all.
Correct.
Which is beautiful. So before we get ready to wrap up, the last thing that I want to know is, for individuals out there who come from similar circumstances, who say, guys, I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know if I want to be better. I don't even know if I want my community to be better. What do you have to say to them?
Well, first and foremost, I'll be speaking as Dr. Yusef Bunchy Shakur, the co-executive director at the Michigan Roundtable and for Just Communities. And so I speak that because if you had told me in my childhood this is what I become, I'm like, man, you full of shit. That's not who I would become, because I didn't see that in my cards. And in me becoming who I am, I produced that. It didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And producing that is the ability to heal, the ability to navigate the rough terrain and continue to push yourself to be able to continue to grow. But growing for what purpose? But also, again, it doesn't mean that you have to be Dr. Yusef Shakur. You can just be Yusef Shakur.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to be the co-executive. You can be the guy that's taking out trash. But at the end of the day, whatever title I have, or role I have, there's nothing greater the ability to drive down the street and I'm at a light and I don't have to worry about who's pulling up next to me. There's nothing greater than when I'm out with my son and I can go anywhere in the city. I don't have to limit myself because I got beefs around this motherfucker. There's nothing greater when I can go where I was once considered public enemy number one in a certain area, and I go get my hair cut now.
Yeah, and you're beloved.
Yeah, I mean that's I'm wealthy on those terms. Where again, when days I don't have gas money, there's people I can literally call and say, man, or if I don't call them, they're cussing me out. Why you didn't call me, bro? And so until we understand what it means to be black in America, we'll continue to be betraying what it means to be Black in America.
I love that you said overstand.
Yes.
I heard that, right? Because so oftentimes we say we've got to understand something, but what you're inviting us to do is to learn so much about ourselves and to never stop.
And to go over.
And to continue.
Stop going under.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And my last question for you before you tell the audience how they can stay in touch with you, for those individuals who feel like redemption is not available for them, they have done so much to wreak havoc on themselves, those around them. What do you have to say to them?
I mean, the fact that you're here, the fact that you're breathing, it is a testament of itself. And sometimes, again, going back to what we talking about success, we look at success something down the road. Reality, success is now.
Yes.
Success is that you have the fortitude to overcome being molested socially or physically, the fortitude to come out of prison and have your right mind, the fortitude to navigate poverty, the fortitude to navigate disrespectful, racist, ignorant teachers, policies, that impacted and scarred your life.
Yeah.
But to take those scars and turn into beautiful testimonies to be able to now change yourself, to change your community. So we have the power. The power is not outside of us. It's inside of us.
That's right.
But when we connect that power with others, we become more powerful. And I just ended on this, like, we have to stop searching for like-minded people and search for like-value people. Because when you search for like-minded people, you set yourself up for failure. Because as soon as you do something that I don't like, I'm saying fuck you, or I'm disappointed. But when you search for like-value people, you protect yourself in disappointment, because the reality is there is no false hope. Because I value you and you value me, but it leaves room for dislike. It leaves room for disappointment.
Dr. Shakur, let the people know how they can stay in touch with you.
Man, just check out MichiganRoundtable.org. And I'm over there. Look me up on Facebook. All social stuff for was it Twitter or X now? Also, come and check me out at the Mama Cool Community House.
Yes, I love Mama Cool Community House. All right, y'all. So I want to share my deep gratitude for tuning in today. I hope the insights that we shared have opened up new pathways for your healing and liberation. If either of us can be in touch with you, please don't hesitate to reach out. And be sure to tune in for the 8 other episodes on the Alchemizing Trauma for Community series, along with the 100 additional plus episodes that we have on the Be Well Beautiful People podcast. If you found value in today's show us some love on YouTube, show us some love on the podcast platform that you're listening on, and you're also welcome to share your thoughts at info@bewellbeautifulpeople.org. And if you haven't picked up my memoir, Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal, Find Liberation and Joy, I invite you to do so at DemarraWest.com. You can use code Alchemizing to save 25% off. The Be Well Beautiful People podcast series for this particular series, Alchemizing Trauma for Community Impact, has been sponsored by the Love Building, which is a subsidiary of the Allied Media Project and home for the social justice and creative community in Detroit. We are also supported by H&B Building Services, providing top-notch, reliable building services for all your personal and professional needs, in addition to Detroit's own The Lip Bar, which is all about pulling out the beauty that already exists in you through their beautiful makeup line. We are so grateful that you joined us. We want to leave you with a beautiful quote.
Life is like a bus. Either you're going to be the driver or the passenger.
Hey, that's a great way to leave us. Until next time, beautiful people. Ashe.